Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists dental associates with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about lab fee reductions for a dental associate. So what does your employer take out of your compensation regarding lab fees, if it does exist? So let's kind of break down how dental associates are generally compensated. One, you could just get a straight base salary. I find this is probably the least used compensation model for a dental associate. Maybe with some DSOs, they would use that, but for the most part, it's either a daily rate or you're guaranteed a minimum per day of working, or some kind of collections model, meaning you get a percentage, usually somewhere between 30 to 40% of any of the collections that the practice receives based upon your personally performed services. And then they will also subtract out certain fees if the insurance either denies a claim or writes it down, or someone flakes on a payment plan, that type of thing. And then what this video is about, they also will subtract out lab fees as well. Now, for some specialties or practice areas, like if you're just doing like pediatric dentistry, for instance, you're not using a ton of labs. So in that scenario, it really wouldn't matter that much. But if you're doing, bridges, crowns, implants, anything that requires extensive lab fees or equipment, this could definitely affect your pay down the road. And let me just give some scenarios. This is something that varies probably more than anything in a dental associate contract, meaning whether the employer just completely comps all lab fees or if they require you to pay 100% of them. There is no rhyme or reason as to why a practice does it. It just, varies wildly across the industry. The most common way of doing it is, let's just say you get a third of your collection. So your compensation is purely tied to whatever the practice brings in, you get a third of that. Then most of the time, if they were going to charge for lab fees, they would marry it with whatever the percentage of your collections are. So if you have a third of collections, they would say you have to pay for a third of the lab fees. That's a standard way of doing it. Now, what ultimately matters is how much will that take off of what you ultimately receive? And I'll just kind of go through some numbers. Now, a general rule of thumb is kind of bad debt, denials, insurance write-downs, somewhere between 5 to 6% is a kind of normal amount for like a decently well-run practice. So for every $100 that's billed on your behalf, the practice will receive around 95 of that. So 5% immediately of what your production is, you're going to lose just from that. Now, as far as lab fees go, a good rule of thumb, now once again, this is very specialty dependent, but we're just talking kind of like general dentistry, somewhere between 2 to 3% of your total productivity will go towards lab fees. So once again, if you were to charge $100 for an encounter, $2 to $3 of that would go towards lab fees. And so if you add up the lab fees and the bad debt write-downs, it's going to be somewhere between 7 to 8% total. So if you were to bill $100 for a service, you can expect somewhere between $92 to $93 coming back to you, and that would be normal. So you're never going to receive, or at least very rarely, receive the entire amount of what's billed out for service. Now, maybe if you're in a practice that's doing a ton of cosmetic dentistry, or in a practice that does only fee for service where everyone is paying cash, you don't have to worry about insurance. That scenario, it's going to be much higher, but those lab fees still would exist, and so that would be the one thing that would be taken out of your compensation. This is a term that's in any contract, in the compensation section. Now, if it's not in the contract, meaning if it just says you get 33% of collections, and that's it, and there are no lab fees written down, then the employer should not be charging you for lab fees. It's not some kind of variable thing. The entire point of the contract is to kind of dictate the terms of what your employment relationship is, and obviously taking any money out of your compensation is a important term that should be listed in any contract. So this is negotiable, meaning if they're going to charge you 100% of lab fees, you can negotiate it down to 75% or 50% or 25%. It's completely up to you and the employer of reaching some kind of decision. But keep in mind, it ultimately is a relatively small amount, once again, specialty based. And so, focusing all your attention on this may not be, the best use of the capital. Like, you only have so much goodwill stored up when you're negotiating a contract. And if you're focusing on small things that have a relatively low effect on your career, you're probably misallocating what you need to focus on. For some people, that's the non-compete. For some people, it's the percentage of collections that they receive. For some people, it's just the schedule, or the time off, or the benefits, or the base salary, or the daily rate. There's a million things that you could focus on. So lab fees certainly are important because they will affect your compensation down the road. But in the grand scheme of things, it may not be the most important thing. So this kind of breakdown of lab fee deductions for a dental associate. If you have any questions about your employment contract or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm at the contact info listed below in the description. And I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.